All right, in today's video, I wanted to talk about the rice diet. Let's get into it. So this is actually one of the most popular topics on my channel is the rice diet when I went and looked at the analytics. It's not something that I follow to a T, and I'm going to give you some of the reasons why. I also wanted to talk about the walking aspect of it and why it would have been so effective and why walking so effective in the first place. Anyway, this is Ryan. This is High Carb Regenerator. Welcome to my channel. Let's get started. So the rice diet. Now, I'm going to start off by saying if you get this book or if you had this book and if you have it already, you know that this isn't a blueprint. There's no set anything in here. So the rice diet in and of itself, I'm just going to say it right now, is the rice, sugar, fruit, and fruit juice. That was basically the bottom line as far as what people were eating. It cured all kinds of things, which it talks about in here. Renal, eye, basically kidney, anything that would deal with circulation. It was curing diabetes. It was curing obesity. It was curing just about every ailment that the body has. It's kind of almost like a mucusless diet, but not really. If you had more fruit than rice, then it would be more like the mucusless diet. But I think why it was so effective is it's kind of like an elimination diet. You eliminate things that are actually causing these issues. It's kind of like the Pritikin protocols. The Pritikin protocols, when he was, he did himself in, but when they went in and did the autopsy, they said that he had the vascular system of like a 13-year-old because there wasn't a lot of fat in the system. He's the one that did himself in. Otherwise, he probably would have lived longer. And it's the same thing with this. Now, where Pritikin used potatoes, Walter Kempner used rice. It's kind of the bottom line there. Pritikin didn't talk about fruit as much. And speaking of fruit, there wasn't actually a ton of fruit even mentioned in this book, if any. I don't know. I've seen people put up what they were actually eating, it seemed like apples and citrus. And maybe bananas was the most popular on the rice diet. I've also heard of people curing their sleep apnea, if it was fat-induced sleep apnea. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to talk about, altering the diet in a little bit, but I wanted to talk about the walking aspect. And there's this thing called zone training, and I'm going to put a little chart up here. Okay, so that's the chart for zone training. When you are walking, you are staying in largely zone 2. Zone 2 is going to teach your body to use fat more than carbohydrates. Now, as you get up on that zone list, you're going to start burning more carbohydrates. So if you can think of fat as they used to use whale blubber or whatever in, whatever kind of source they had, and oil lamps because it burns for a long time. Comparatively, you wouldn't want to put like high octane, like jet fuel in a lamp because it's going to burn so fast it might actually blow the lamp up. And that's the difference between carbohydrates and fat. So fat's going to have that long burn, and that's why when you do like a zone 2 training or like a lower impact, or like my favorite's the rebounder, Cellerciser, you're going to burn more fat than carbohydrates. And if you're at zone 5, you're going to burn more carbohydrates than fat. So it's really ineffective at actually causing any kind of weight loss. That's why I'm not a big advocate of, I don't know how else to say it, like balls to the walls training. Like where you're sweating, you can't breathe, you can't talk, you can't anything. You got to exercise at a talking level, and that's when you burn primarily fat. And that's, why, walking, like you see these women out there. I always use the women example because that's who I see mostly out, like walking themselves, a dog, or like pushing a stroller or something like that. This is primarily how they stay slender, is because it's just, a zone 2 training. And that is combined with high carbohydrates. So the high carbohydrates are going to do what they need to do, and you're not burning excess. So you're not having a lot of spillover. So if you're on a keto diet, you're going to turn like a good 35 to 50% of what you eat in the fat and protein world into carbohydrates, because it's way more needed than fat and protein. So if you're just eating the carbohydrates that you need, and you're not gonna store them anywhere else but your muscles and your liver and whatever you don't have. If you ever notice, if you ate way more than you probably should have, you'll start like getting hot. You'll start noticing like, man, I'm getting really hot, or you'll get jittery, or you'll have some kind of reaction to that. That's the body burning the carbohydrates off. But if you eat fat, you know, depending on what diet or doctor you really look or watch or talk to, or, you know, anything anymore. But fat supposedly just goes right into the fat. They can actually biopsy you and tell you exactly what kind of things you've eaten, because your fat, their body literally doesn't even change the fat. It just plugs it into your fat stores that you already have. So when you go and do the walking, because that was a big, huge part of this. I mean, he had some people walking 16 to 20 miles, but they were living at the Rice Diet Center. So this is all they had to do every day, was go, you know, eat and go for their walks. But when you train like that and when you eat like that, that's going to be like the perfect combination. You get exactly what the body's looking for, because the body runs 90% off carbohydrates, if not more. So it already has its fuel source. But when you're out there walking, it's kind of like having a car. You know, you put gasoline in the tank, and the car burns more than just gasoline, because oxygen is way more flammable than gas is. So it's going to burn however much percentage of oxygen to gas that it needs to get you to the speed that you're at. When you're going faster, you're burning more oxygen. This, you know, I'm not going to get into anything more than that. So that's kind of the analogy to you know, to the body. Now, should you go off plan and add things in, or maybe substitute out rice for potatoes, which a lot of people ask me about? If you do that, I think it's fine, unless you have one of these terrible diseases that are in here and you're trying to cure it naturally. But it kind of turns into the predicament or starch solution at that point, and it's not really the rice diet anymore. So that's up to you. I will give this example, and actually I'm going to give it to you right now. So here's the Japanese food pyramid. It's a reverse pyramid. So as you can see, the Japanese, basically carbohydrates and vegetables is like the main staple. And I think, you know, when you think of rice, people who eat rice, it's largely people from China, Korea, Japan, some other Asian countries. This, not singling anybody out. It's just the way it is. You know, it's certain areas have certain starches. But when you think about that, I always was fascinated with the Japanese, so I studied that way more. And I know that they eat about 18 to 20% fat a day, but they're still slender. They still don't really have that many diseases when they eat this way, when they eat the standard Japanese diet. So they have this stuff in their diet. They have, you know, and like if I was actually, for a long time, I was taking Tai Chi from a man that used to live in China. And he used to tell me about these huge platefuls of food that he used to eat, and it'd be these huge plates of rice and vegetables. They weren't just eating rice, right? They were eating primarily rice. If you look at the the calorie count, majority of it's coming from white rice. But they weren't just eating white rice. And I also did a video, if I can find it, if I still have it out there, I'll link it here, of a woman that did the rice diet, or just rice only, I think for a week, maybe it was a month. I believe it was a week. And she lost about like 7 pounds or so, like a pound a day. So there's that. But rice doesn't, after a while, it doesn't digest terribly well if you just eat rice. And I think that's why you should really consider, you know, adding a little bit of salt in. The sugar definitely helps digest the rice. So does the fruit. And so do vegetables. You know, this kind of all combines, and it gets, you know, everything moving, number two, out of you. So that's my thought on it. You know, if you really study the people who eat this way, they really add, you know, vegetables and salt. I mean, I think I read that the average Japanese person has 25 grams of salt a day. So think about how much salt that is, and how much that's really pushing the rice out. Because the only reason I'm saying this is I did the rice diet exclusively for about a month, and I did start having backup issues, and so I had to add stuff in. And shortly after that is actually when I did raw only, and I did not have backup issues with that. Anyways, that's the video. Any comments, questions down below. Like I said, I really think unless you are really struggling with everything, like you got like heart issues or something like that, I really think that you can add to it. If you are going or can't or shouldn't add to it, you should just stick to the plan. But if you're not, I think you can just add to it, kind of do your own style. It does kind of just turn into the Asian rice diet at that point. You know, what are you gonna do? Or if you add potatoes in, it's basically the Pritikin diet. If you add all starches in, then it turns into the starch solution. So that's kind of the difference. Anyway, comments, questions, like I said, down below. Like, subscribe, and I'll talk to you in the next video.